Fifey, Craig, Woody, I'm a fool. Get me out of here.
Take my hand, take my whole life too, but I can't help falling in love with you.
Good morning, good evening. Welcome to a very special episode of Fools Rush In. I'm your host this morning, Rich. As you can see, your usual host, Fifey, is not here with us this morning, but don't worry, we have got a very, very special guest to introduce to you today that I'm sure that you're eager to hear. But joining me to ask these very good questions is I'm going to introduce them to you now. Please let's welcome Big Time Ben. How are you doing, mate?
Rich.
You okay?
Yes, mate. I'm buzzing for today. I can't wait. Danny Wilson's a particular hero of mine, and treasured memories. So I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic, mate. And I'm sure you've got some very good questions to ask him as well.
Yeah, can't wait. Really looking forward to this one.
And let's introduce Nick to the podcast. Here we go.
How are you doing, morning, Rich.
How are you doing today, mate? You okay?
Yeah. Really looking forward to this. What a day to start on Monday. Podcast in the morning. Danny Wilson on. Really looking forward to that. And England in the afternoon. Doesn't get much better than that.
It doesn't get much better than that, especially for a Monday morning, mate. Yeah, absolutely hear you on that one. And now just introducing a very special guest for our podcast today. He managed 121 games for Swindon and is known as a cult hero. He got us to our first playoff final, or our first cup final in 17 years. So please welcome from the amazing 2009-2010 season, welcome Danny Wilson. Hiya, Danny. How are you?
Good morning, gents. I'm very well, thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks very much for coming on today, Danny. I know we've got some very good questions to ask you about your time here at Swindon Town, but also your time over your playing and managerial career. You've just released a new book out as well, which will just show up here. Just talk us a little bit about that book, Danny, and what your process was in writing that book. And did you have a diary to keep? Because you had a lot of context in that book of your time over your playing and managerial career. How were you able to remember all
that? Google. And my good lady as well, Karen. We sat down. As you may know, chaps, I'm not really a media guy. I don't do a lot of TV programs or radios. So it was a little bit of a shock to everybody, really, who know me with regards to penning a book. But one of the reasons I did it, not one of the reasons, a few reasons. One in particular was Matthew Mann, who's a ghost writer for the story, and he approached me with a good friend of his who used to work at Leicester City as a chief executive, and Barry Pierpoint, his name is. Excuse me, and they just said, would you fancy doing a book? And I've been asked on numerous occasions to do it, and I turned them down flatly because I just not interested. I'm not a kiss and tell type of bloke. I'm not one of those who bear grudges about anything and want to get it out there. But they explained to me, he said, really, what about for your family? There's a few little funny stories in that maybe the kids have not heard. And we've just had 2 new grandchildren in the last few years. So, I think they explain, all they'll see really is Danny Wilson in a football kit or a shirt and tie and not really understand what you did. And so it's a little bit of a legacy for them. And I sat down and talked with Karen and then my children, Laurie and Carrie, and we came up and said, yeah, we'll try it. And I still wasn't 100% convinced until I saw the final script of it, and then I thought, well, yeah, it's quite a little bit of fun, But one or two things I put straight in there, that possibly, people thought they had the truth about, and maybe I just straightened that up a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, you've obviously had a massive career, not only in playing, obviously managing, and not only playing as well. But I think one of my main questions was, what did you prefer? I mean, a lot of people say that they prefer the playing side of it, but what was it for you? Was it managing, or was it actually playing?
Well, if you'd have asked me, after a few years after finishing playing, I'd have said playing definitely. Management is quite tough. You're in front of you. You're facing up to a lot more, hundreds more of problems that you ever had to face up with when you were just playing. You put your kit on, you went your training, did all your training, went home. And played the match days. And then went home again. Managing is quite the opposite. You're rarely at home. Every day, you just don't know. It could be a 24-hour day, it could be a 12-hour day, but you're not sure. So that uncertainty is a little bit scary at times. But I grew to enjoy it. I grew to enjoy the pressure of it. I like the challenges. I enjoy enjoying watching players develop, moving on, and if they're investing themselves, great, and I have a great interest in that, and took a lot of pride in that as well. So the playing, I suppose, is the best, but it's a good second best being a manager.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you obviously you started management at quite a young age as well. You were 34, I believe, was it, when you started managing? Is that correct? Yeah. So how was that? How was the transition? Because you were obviously Barnsley. You started your managerial career at where you just finished playing. What was that? What was that like? What was that transition, and who helped you gain all the experience that you got, and to have that momentous career in managing after that playing after your playing career?
Well, a lot of guys that come into management, they come in and like we all do, we think it's easy and we get on with it and think whatever we say is the best, and it's not. And I think the young ones that come in, particularly nowadays, I think they need that little bit of guidance, a little bit of mentorship. I had it with the then owner, structure of Barnsley, John, and he from my point of view, I couldn't have done it without him. He was a great source of knowledge. His father had been at the football club prior to him. So John and his board of directors, John Dennis and his board of directors, they were fantastic help for me. Never really put any pressure on me. Told me what I can and what I can't have, which was great. I like the honesty of them. But really, the journey that I went through with them, I have to really turn around and thank them, because they believed in what we were doing more than anything, and they supported us as much as they could. So I don't think you can ask for anything more really when you come into the game.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And obviously, would slightly carry on with your managing career, and we'll talk about the time, obviously, when you started joining, when you joined Swindon Town, which was in 2000, towards the end of 2008, and with a Bristol City connection. What were your thoughts when you started joining, when you joined Swindon Town? Because Bristol City is one of our rivals. We'll talk about another rival of ours in a minute, which I believe Nick's got a question on. But when you started joining, when you joined Swindon Town, what was your thought process when you joined us?
Well, I think from when you're in the jobs in the job that we do, in fairness, I think it's always difficult to come back into football again, because once you get the bullet, not only is it pride and everything, but you're wondering whether you're getting another job anywhere. Sometimes it comes along that a job really is not going to suit you, and I've a few times I've had one or two jobs then because we didn't really have a fit. But when I look back at the history that you'd had, prior, to me coming along and the tradition of the football club, then it's easy to sell really. And then obviously you have to go down and you have to have your conversations with the people upstairs, I, from my point of view, was Mr. Fitton. So from that point of view, you know, actually sitting down in front of the board, and I didn't really realise I was having an interview. I just came,
Oh,
and next, I came down and Andrew said, would you like the job? And it was brilliant, So I've not been able to work that long, and still very hungry, and still very determined to prove, that that we could be a successful manager. Because it's always in the back of your mind when you get the sack that you're not as good as you think you are, and that's not. It reevaluates your own surroundings, your own approaches to the job, and again you've got a new as well, so you have to evaluate everything again. So you started from scratch straight away. But to come into Swindon at that time was a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, because obviously you were sort of thrown in the deep end a little bit, obviously at the start of your managerial career, because it was very quickly on that you were actually managing in the Premier League. So obviously to take because we were in League One at the time, we recently got promoted back to League One at the time when you took over as manager. But that experience from when you were at Barnsley and Sheffield Wednesday, how did that help you? In terms of, because I know you had some managerial spells before that, how did that help you, and what experiences did you take when you took over the Swindon job, and what did you feel as if that you could add as value to the team that we had at the time?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate in not just my playing days, but also my early part of managing, is that we've always wanted to play in a certain manner and play in a certain level of attacking football. And the managers that I've been fortunate to play underneath, have always demanded that you play open attacking football, stuff that put on the edge of the seat at times, with your positivity. You don't always have the players to do that. You have to that can really put you on the edge of the seat. But when you've got them, you've got to try and utilise them. And I think as a team, what we try to take an attractive style of football to the fans, and I think once you start in that, then people come on side fairly quickly, and that's what our aim must be. First and foremost, when I first came in, it was stopping being relegated. That's that was the remit. Nobody wanted to be relegated straight away, but time to try and turn that way. I think it was towards the end of when I came in. So a bit of time, but it's still at the same time, you like I said before, the players, and players come on board, then that's happy days. If you've got some reluctance, then it's going to be very difficult. But thankfully, they.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, I want to get into the 2009-2010 season, because that was one of our most successful years in recent history, and you did lead us to our first Wembley final in 17 years since we got promoted in 1993 to the Premier League. So for all of us, and especially, so Kieran's actually just joined us as well, and Kieran will know as well as I do at that time what it meant for us, because we weren't around in 1993 when Swindon were promoted to the Premier League. So for us, that was just such a momentous occasion. And but I want to take us back to the start of that, because the start of that season, it didn't start off the best, did it?
Well, it did. I think we had a bit of an awful run, if you like. It's very, very hit and miss at times, and I think there's a lot of doubt, about whether we're doing the right thing, and not just by the fans and by within ourselves. Were we doing the thing right? Were we approaching it right? Were we putting players in certain positions? Was it going to be conducive to the game and bring the best out of them? So you start to look at yourself. But first and foremost, I think we had to remember as well that getting into it not just on your first game. You've got to have that little bit of patience. And it's not always easy when you're not getting results. But you've still got to have that belief. And I think if you can continue that and you've got the belief around you, you've got a chance. And we always felt we had that, even though the results didn't go our way in the early part of the season. We always felt we had that. Absolutely.
And I think some of the characters you had in that squad as well was, I mean, they were absolutely brilliant. They were. I want to know what they were to manage. Like, you had players like Simon Ferry, Charlie Austin came in, I believe, in October. What Gordon Greer? What were those players to manage like? And have you got any interesting stories to share on them?
Well, the one thing that, for me, like to name it, just one or two, like the David Lucases of this world and Gordon Greer to start with, and they were very strong characters, and they had an opinion they had an opinion of how they wanted to play, and they also had an opinion about each other. So in that respect, you get some sort of confrontation. And we had it many times on the training ground. It was brilliant. I used to love to watch it, and I used to let it go on. If it came to near us, I just laugh and step back, because it showed you what it meant to them, and what winning games meant to them, and what the club meant to them. So in that respect, that's what we did. I can remember Gordon and David coming to blows just in an ordinary game of playing once in 11v11. I was setting the team up.
Was that in a training session? Was it?
Yeah. One
agreed
with the other, and so David walked up the pitch to where the centre back position and punched. And
That's
to be fair, that squad did have a never say die attitude as well. I feel like you look at that Charlton playoff game. We came back from the absolute dead that night, and like they did one of the most simple things as well, played to the whistle to get that goal back as well. Like, it's such a never say die attitude, that whole squad. I think that's what carried us so well that season, because there were times where you look like, how are we coming back from this, and they just pulled us back out of it again and again, and did so well that year.
Yeah. I mean, they were great characters, and that's only like little things that happen. We've had lots of disagreements, and great, it's healthy. And when you've got players showing that much passion when you're training, they're going to take it onto the pitch and be controlled, hopefully. Not do anything silly, but they've got that passion and they've got fire in the belly, and that's what we encourage all the time. And in fairness, that's what fans want to see. They want to see you giving everything for the football club, and they did. They were just to do that.
So going back to the start of the season, obviously there was quite a big turnaround of players between the previous season and season 9 and season 10. What was the thinking in going into the squad? What was the plan? What were the changes that you wanted to implement? What you thought our strengths and weaknesses were from the season before? Because I believe we finished 15th in your first season at Swindon. Yeah. So it was quite a trajectory actually to finish within the playoffs and narrowly miss out on automatic promotion, which I honestly thought was in the bag after Leeds, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But so planning into the season. So we go into the pre-season after I believe it was the Peterborough game. Simon Cox is going away, unfortunately. Obviously, that's a massive hole to fill in. And obviously, there's going to be a big change of player. What was the thinking into the squad? What was the plan for promotion, or was it just to have a better season than the season before? What was the relationship like with Andrew Fitton and the board at the time? What was the discussions?
Well, the one thing I did have was a great relationship with Andrew. And the rest of the board, the members as well. They were very supportive, as I said before, other clubs. If you've got that, you've got a good chance. But I had a very, very special relationship in one where, I didn't really know Andrew, and Andrew didn't know me. I didn't know the characters. We didn't know each other's character. What was going to be said, and if things would be followed, well, this, that, and the other. Anyway, so Andrew said to me, he said, "Listen, Dan," he said, "let's just try and get to the playoffs. If we get to the playoffs, it's job done. It's brilliant. It just gives everybody a massive lift. What happens after that, we'll just take. But let's just try and get to the playoffs." So that was the focus all the way through. And my conversation with him was, well, listen, that's fine. You finished 15th last year. It's you don't just wave a wand and then all of a sudden you end up 5th next year. There's a lot of graft and a lot of players, that need to be coming and going. They give you half a chance with that and in that belief. And in fairness, Andrew supported me all the way. You know, no problem whatsoever. Always there for us. Always there. You know, to have a chat with. We used to go out for lunch. You know, on occasions with the board in a very relaxed manner. You know, not big football in your face type of thing. And it was great. You know, because you can get things over a lot easier then than when you're under pressure, chatting about things in a board meeting. So that was how it went. That was the start of the season. How it, you know, we wanted to take the season on as we went to the position of the club at the end of the season as we went along. But as I said, you know, the early part of that season didn't start too well.
No,
Yeah,
Gillingham away. Sorry,
Dan, just
Gillingham
change.
away at 5-0 wasn't the best, but I think it soon picked up after, which was good.
Yeah, Danny, just changing track a bit and sort of going back to your playing days as well as your managing days. There's quite a few links with Swindon and yourself with players like Lee Peacock, Christian Roberts, you had it at Bristol. And one of the other interesting links I found was looking at it. Obviously, you won the League Cup, beating Arsenal in the final. And obviously going back, Swindon beat Arsenal in the League Cup final back in '69. So there's a real good link there. And even better, you beat Oxford United in the semis. So for us, you know, it don't get much better than that. So obviously you scored in that final. You know, we talk about Wembley. I've been lucky enough to see Swindon at Wembley, 3 at the old Wembley, which we won, 3 at the new Wembley, which we lost, unfortunately. What was it like for yourself, obviously playing and scoring that crucial equaliser at Wembley?
Well, all I say, Nick, it's every schoolboy, I think. You know, I've just done something that I've thought about all my life and spoke about, you know, since I went into football. You know, I think everybody wants to play at the top. Everybody wants to play in the big games. Everybody wants to score the winning goal in the big games. You know, but so from my point of view, a personal point of view, it was a massive positive for me. It helped me in terms of my confidence as well, playing the rest of my career, whatever clubs I went to. But it also helped us as well, you know, be able to perform under pressure. And I think that little things like that help you as you go along, especially in your management. Because you do get players who are nervous, and you get players who might freeze a little bit on occasions, and you just try and transfer that over a bit. You know, it doesn't always work, and we know that. You know, when you get on that pitch, it's down to the individual. But you do the best you can, and so really deep down, it was a massive moment from my point of view, my career, but a massive moment for the football club as well, because we've always been underdogs. You know, I've never been for a team who's been favourites for anything. You know, we're always fighting and battling against the big boys, but always did a good job against them. So you know, it was a big milestone for everybody concerned, but it was a magnificent occasion from a personal point of view, my family's point of view.
Brilliant, yeah.
And I guess that sort of feeds in as well to when we played Millwall in the playoff final as well, because we weren't. I wouldn't say we were favourites going in, considering they were in the playoff final the year before and they lost. So they were coming back in quite fresh. So obviously for us to go in as underdogs, obviously it didn't go quite the way we wanted it. It wasn't quite the fairy tale we had. But obviously with your previous experience as a player, and I know you were were in a playoff final as a manager as well before that. But I'm sure you had some really good words to say to the players, obviously prior to the game. What did you say sort of in your team talk? If you can remember what you said in your team talk in that final.
Well, it's not necessarily what you say prior to going out. You've been working all week. You know, you're preparing all week. You're not just going in and having 10 minutes before a game and then hopefully they'll respond to what you say. You know, we've been on the training ground all week, and we knew exactly what, you know, the strengths of Millwall would be. You know, big Morrison up front. You know, they're a back to front team. You had to compete with that physical side of it before you even started to try and play. But we also knew they were trying to follow the way that we wanted to play. So they've done their homework as well. You know, they've been on their training ground all week. So, you know, we were two contrasting really styles of play. You know, one was a more direct route, and ours was the opposite. And
Yeah.
So in that respect, you've got to try and force your way of playing onto the opposition, and it's not always easy. It's a lot easier to knock a wall down than it is to build one.
Mm.
Do you think we would have won that if Gordon Greer had played?
I was thinking that.
Well, he was catalyst to how he wanted to play, wasn't he?
He was huge.
He was a modern day centre back now. Gordon's step into any football team now when he was young and play the football that everybody wanted to play. We were playing it a long time ago. And Gordon was, like I say, in the way that we wanted to play. So yeah, we did miss him. Would we have won it? I don't know. I don't know if we won it, but I think we're giving ourselves a better chance to win it.
Yeah, 100%.
Certainly would have played with a little bit more confidence and whatever because of his experience at the back there.
Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we're not going to dive too much into the myth. We'll dive a bit into the player. But obviously, the pitch at Wembley that day obviously wasn't the greatest because there was a playoff final the day before. But how unlucky was Charlie Austin when that chance was missed?
Well, it was, and I think we look back and you just touched on the game that was there before the playoff game from League Two was prior to us. But even prior to us, we had concerns about the pitch. Everybody had been talking about this being relayed every day that a game had been played, it taken up and put a new pitch down, and because it was so poor, the quality of the pitch was very, very, very inconsistent. But they didn't do it on the game that we did. When we played, the next day they'd ripped it up and put a new pitch down for the championship. But I think it was down to maybe that bubble, maybe people saw that bubble and the way that people complained about. The quality, the quality of a pitch when you're going into that level should be the highest standard ever.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
You got to think of the money at stake in these games, especially that's when they did it for the championship. They've seen that bubble and gone that they can't have that risk in the amount of money that involved in those games. But still, to us, that money it's a shame that we were the side that had to go through that because it's always that one has always been the biggest what if of us since I followed Swindon, because I think that goal goes in, the momentum's with us, we've got a huge chance because I think we were a better side by far than them. They just got lucky and sat back.
Oh, listen, if going through before, Paddy Power would have paid up for his goal because he knew we were going to score. Paddy Power would have early because Paddy on them situations would have just buried it, and he's got that bubble. And the turning point, it was from our point of view because it was a great chance. And nothing to do with player misguiding his shot, but it was down to the so going back to us talking before about how we played and how we wanted to play. The pitch wasn't conducive to us. It was easier to break our play up than it was the way around. We wanted to play on the deck, and the odd bubble, the one that you miss control, you have to concentrate how to miss control. You've got your eye on the ball all the time, and players are approaching you, tackling you. You don't really see them coming because you're trying to concentrate and keeping control of it. And next minute you get a tackle and plays broken up again. So it was a little bit more conducive for Millwall, the condition for us. But that's no excuse. You've still got to play against teams of every ilk, however they want to play. There's no right and no wrong way to play. In a certain manner, that's great. That's what they did, and they just stifled us. And when you get like we had, if you stick it away, it's a different matter, and we didn't do it, unfortunately.
Oh, if that goes in, the game changes completely, especially what happened to Millwall the previous year. The psychology of it and the uplift and everything, and the game turns on its head. I remember Charlie when he was bearing down, I was already celebrating because he just doesn't miss them. All season we've seen him slot it on, and you would have thought the same at the time. We're in here, and as it went past the post, I was up. I thought it was in, and then I just collapsed in a heap. It's like.
I just remember your reaction, Danny. Obviously, because they showed the replay afterwards, and it just did the biggest jump in the air, and just like heads. Yeah. I was like,
because he
just can't believe he's just missed that.
I have the same as all the fans. Charlie bearing down on goal with the goalkeeper to beat. There was only one winner, and that was where it was. And we worked so hard all that game to try and get that one opportunity as well. And all you want is fall to your striker, fall to Charlie. That's it. if it fell to, I don't know, to Gordon Green, you think, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just going to ask the question because obviously the concerns before the game, obviously with this pitch, was there any concerns during the week? Obviously that you knew that there was going to be 3 games to be played on that Wembley turf. Was there any speculation that it might be changed venues at all, or was there none of that? Was it like, right, we're playing at Wembley? None of these concerns were really raised at the time.
Well, they weren't, no, because you hope that the people that's in charge are standard themselves are understood. We were on the understanding that the pitches would be replaced, because it wasn't just any, as I said before, for months prior to the games coming up, there was always a concern about the standard of that pitch. When international games are on there or other games, there was always that concern, and so we left it to the authorities. They know best, they'll make sure that it's a pitch that everybody would look down and say, wow, what a stadium, what a pitch, and it gives them that kudos that they need. They didn't do it, and fell too far below what the standards should have been on that particular day.
Yeah,
there's a lot of focus on the pitch about the previous, not for the Swindon game, just at that time. I remember there was a lot of talk of the pitch and the standard of the Wembley pitch at the time, and it's all instantly got better after that. That League One final, which is a shame. With the players as well, because obviously Charlie Austin, I remember pictures of him bawling in tears at full time with the shirt over his head and watching the Millwall players celebrating everything. What do you do? What's it like going back into that changing room after, what do you say to them? How do you pick them back up? What can you say to them? What was obviously we know what the atmosphere was like, but were they angry? Were they, was it very quiet? Was it, how do players react to that sort of situation?
On the floor. They're completely on the floor. They've played 46, 48 games, 50 games maybe to try and get to the position where they are, and then all of a sudden it's not, the end result is not what they wanted. And so they're absolutely gutted. And to pick them up at that particular moment in time is virtually impossible. Anybody I think would agree that, it takes weeks. It takes weeks to talk to them, to bring them around and let them get away, etc., and then bring them back. And then when they come back, then that's when you've got to start planning. Hopefully you've got 1 or 2 new players coming in who can spark the dressing room up again. He's not had that unfortunate situation that when you lose a final. And so they're a bit fresher and a little bit brighter and what have you. But it's very difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with a conversation after the game. It's yes, you have your condolences, and yes, you put your arm around lads, but they've got to get it out of the system somewhere, and they've got to get out, and they've got to get it a fresh mind and come back, with that extra determination that Millwall possibly did, when they came for the second year in the playoffs. That was maybe what our challenge was going to be. Can we do what Millwall had done?
Did Kenny Jackett say anything to you at full time? Because obviously he'd been there.
Well, I know Kenny anyway. He's a good friend. He's been in the game a long time, like I had, and he just put your arm around you. There's not a lot he can say. He's got what he wanted. And you expect that as well. I was trying to do the same to him. So no, we just put our arm around each other and just said congratulations. You've got to be humble in those situations. It can't be bitter. But it is difficult to take. But as people say, going up in those circumstances is possibly the best way to get promotion. So I'm sure obviously he was enjoying himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think even though obviously from a fan's point of view, it was a sad time for us because we were literally on the edge. We thought we were going to do it. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be. So I guess now it was time for the rebuild process. Obviously, the goal was to get automatic promotion for the next season, I assume. And what was that rebuilding like? Because we did lose a couple of players in the summer, probably players that we knew that were gonna go at some point. And what were the biggest losses for you going into that new season?
Well, losing players is easy, particularly your best. People are always keeping your eye on them, obviously, and seeing how people are doing, and then obviously they'll test the water and see if there is availability there. And at football clubs like Swindon and like a lot of other clubs, you sometimes have to be a selling club. You have to be realistic. You cannot turn certain amounts of money down for the fact you want to keep your player. You've got to survive, and the club has to be sustainable in itself. So we knew we had a few players that people were watching in that respect. But the biggest thing from my point of view is when you're losing players, if you're losing goals in your team, then it's always the hardest thing to replace. Everybody's after the same one. Everybody wants the goal scorer that's going to get you 20 goals a season. So if you've got one, you're going to find it hard to keep hold of. Now, getting somebody in to replace them, that's the challenge, and so you're possibly going and getting people that's untested, or they might have been okay one season, but they've dropped off, and you might get them cheaper or whatever, and you might just hopefully work a bit of a miracle with them. But that's the hardest part of the team is replacing goals.
Yeah, because we lost Billy Painter, who we haven't actually spoken about, and that he equaled the amount of goals that Charlie Austin scored the season before. And obviously, when you talk about losing goals, I mean, we still had Charlie Austin in terms of those goals, but 50 goals between them the season before, that's still half as many goals as well that came from a large amount of the team. So what was Billy like to coach? And obviously, I know you said there it's the hardest part of losing goals, but just what was he like in terms? Because we know he's a bit of an outrageous character. It's probably understatement of the century, but what was he like, Danny?
Billy was brilliant. I love coaching Billy, and the reason I liked him because he not only was respectful. When he was on the training ground, he worked his tail off. He tried to do the things that we asked him to do, but more than anything, he was a character as well. As you just said, he was fun, and you want that on the training ground as well. You can't be serious all the time. You can't have 9 months of faces that's hitting chins that hitting the floor every morning if things don't go right for you. Billy picked everybody up. Not just Billy. He was a good dressing room, I have to say, but Billy was a big part of that. That fun side of it, and I enjoyed, like I said before, coaching him, managing him, if you like. But when it came on to Saturdays, you could rely on him. He had one of those seasons that every striker dreams of. And before he got his move to Leeds, and that was the only reason that Leeds came in for him. He had that goal scoring behind him, and they were hoping that he could replicate that. Unfortunately, he didn't do it for them, but it was a great move for Billy and one he fully deserved. To score the amount of goals he did that season, that's what you do. You put yourself on a pedestal and hope that people are looking at you. It's a very short. And I don't knock the lads at all if they wanted to better themselves. And also the club has to look how to get money in for them. Although from Billy's position, we didn't get much for him.
Danny, Dan, you talked about Billy Painter there, and you've managed some interesting characters like Sir Gordon Greer, Paolo Di Canio, Charlie Austin, Cy Ferry, Lee Peacock, Christian Roberts. So you've had some really possibly difficult characters to deal with, or colourful characters, let's say. Who was the biggest pain in the ass to you as a player, A, at Swindon, and B, at any of the other clubs that you managed?
Well, let's just say I like a challenge, as I said before.
Yeah, they were some challenging players.
I remember a certain Italian would have been a bit of a challenge.
We'll come on to him in a bit as well, Danny. But who was the biggest pain in the ass that you managed?
It depends how you call a pain in the ass. I never had it because I could handle them, and everyone's a different character. You've got to handle it, individually as well as collectively. Collectively, they've got to be part of the team. That's the first and foremost. They've got to be. If you've got a player out there who just wants to play on his own and just wants to fanny around and not give a flying about the teammates, then he's gone. Because there's no point. And he could be a great player, but there's no point. If the dressing room itself and the training ground itself is having a problem with them, then there's nothing else you can do. you've got to say, well, thanks very much. Being a pain in the backside, not really. A lot of them. I used to tell to Sean Morrison quite a bit, and the reason, and he was a funny boy as well, really great character. But Sean had this lethargic way when he trained, and when he opened his legs, he was like a gazelle at times because he was strong, big, but he wouldn't do it enough for me. And I used to berate him all the time. You could be this and you could be that. If you just started to get it into your character to do it all the time, if you trained, as well as you can play every day, then you're going to go places. And he just laughed and said, "Oh, I can't go and play up that little gaffer. Don't worry. All right." And that type of lad. He was a lovely kid. So really, I didn't really have any. Certainly at Swindon, I didn't have any pain in the backsides at Swindon, not at all. I've had them at other clubs. I've had them at other clubs where I was just saying there that they're not really bothered about where they finish up because they're quite happy with their situation. And if things change around them, they will find their position not as strong as it was. So it might change. And that's a problem because if a player change, then you're going to be very, very stagnant. You're going to be it's going to be very difficult for a team to progress. And once you get those players in your dressing room, get rid of them.
Yeah, definitely. When you were at Swindon, obviously you had a lot of characters. And basically, what I was just going to ask is, was there a lot of like pranks and jokes going on? And would you join in with them? And because I did hear a certain prank Cy Ferry actually talk about, one involving Callum Kennedy. I don't know if you remember too much about that one, but I think it was when he was playing an academy game and he was having an absolute cracking game, and you pranked him about some Ipswich scouts being there. Yeah. I don't know if you remember too much about that and whether or not you'd want to talk a bit more about that.
No, again, young Callum was an up and coming talent. Obviously, a terrific left back, very good left back, left foot, excellent coming forward. That was part of his game. Defensively, wasn't as good as he would like to have been, but his attacking side of it, he took a bit of pressure off that side. But a little bit gullible when he was a young kid as well. Young, said before, Ferry was a character as well. We bought the 2 boys doing from Celtic and him and Paul Caddis, and so they just settled in so quickly because they knew each other straight away. So there was no problem. The lads got to know their humour, particularly in young Simon. He was hilarious. He was also, and I just loved it as well because it was a when you walk past the dressing room, you hear laughing. You're halfway, and you take it seriously when you get on the pitch. But if you get results and you've got the laughing, then the manager's just rubbing his hands and saying, "That's great." That dressing room will look after itself. But the day when we did, we just said he had a good game and got him on the phone and said he was a scout from doing really well. Would you fancy coming to us and this, that, and the other? And you and Callum go, yeah. And it was for me on the phone. I said, "What do you mean you want to leave us?"
So you've got the season, obviously the playoff season, where you can tell that it's a strong squad. It's a strong connection with the squad. They get on, and they're all playing as one. The following season, obviously we don't know, we're not there, but you hear of reports of cliques. You hear the squad sort of divided a little bit. They've sort of gone into their own little packs, which was a big part of the problem of finding consistent form, because there is that little cliques in there. How does that go from a unified squad in a few months to a squad that's divided? And what was it like training with these guys, and how do you get them all together? Is there times where you call dressing rooms in and says, "Look, lads, we're not going too great here. You need to start working together and communicating and start getting on"? Do you start mixing the groups up? Do you start breaking the cliques up? How do you go about that? What do you do?
You have to remember as well, things do get pulled out of proportion as well as, and it's many things that has been said throughout my career, whether it be managing or playing. I've heard them and I thought, I don't even remember that. Yes, we brought some very strong characters into the dressing room because they were winners. And sometimes, if you're not as strong as a personality as a winner, you'll sometimes fall by the wayside. And you sometimes fall behind and you go quiet and you'll think, oh crikey, I don't, he's a bit mouthy, he's a bit this, that, and the other. But if you look at the backgrounds of the lads that we brought in, they were winners and they won. And that's that mentality, as well as having a bit of fun, as well as there was that other serious side. And like I said before, when we brought one or two of the boys in, like Johnny Douglas and what have you. I think who else would he bring in? I think he was one of them. We had who was that? Sorry.
We players who brought in, Jonathan Douglas, a very perfect example actually. He was seen as a bit of a hero in the playoff season, and the following season he got quite a lot of criticism from the fans. Another player that got quite a lot of criticism was Prutton. He was another one that the fact he was he was a big head, and I can't remember Ferry. He disappeared from the first team a little bit. I don't know why, if he was injured or not, but you could see on occasion they could do it. Like we went to Charlton and scored 4 goals. Even then we were still thinking about putting a run on and making the playoffs. But then we just go on these little ruts, and then you hear stories of division within the squad, and it's just it's just how do you go about fixing that really, and what happened within that team to divide, because I believe the quality was still there to stay up, but it just went.
What I'll say to the question is that what I said to you early part of the thing is, if you're winning games, people don't have opinions like this. When you're winning games, nobody seems to understand or see if there's any cracks or make cracks up that are not there. The biggest thing that we had at that time, again, as I said to you before, scoring goals. Now, during those games that you're talking about, early part, the chances that we had, would have been finished off the season before, without a shadow of doubt. A lot of the chances we had would have been back of the net, and everybody been happy and going away and not being disappointed because we haven't won the game and saying, oh, well, have you seen him? He's not talking to him. Oh, he shunned him. And I think it really is all about the results. It's all about putting that back of the net. And should we have done that more often, then I don't think you'd have been asking these questions, quite honestly. I really honestly feel that there was enough in there, but we didn't have the quality to finish off like we did the season before. And that's when you start to get stories developing and players feeling unhappy, and the ones who can shout the loudest are the ones that are being heard at times. And I think it's a little bit of a misconception sometimes, but it's easily rectified. It's by getting goals and winning games, and then everything's.
So you talk about obviously when we were talking about losing players in the summer, and then we got to January, and Charlie Austin was obviously still scoring an awful lot of goals for us at the time. But I'm sure in your mind as well, you probably had scouts looking at him week in, week out. I'm sure you had that feeling as well that an offer might come at some point, and maybe in January too. When it actually got to a point where it was going to happen, that we were going to lose Charlie, what impact did that have on the squad, and what impact did that have on you as a manager? Like, how were you able to sort of get the positivity into the team, and what? Was there an option to maybe sign another striker, and were we close on any strikers?
Well, first and foremost, the effect it has on the team will be the same it had on the fans. They want to see your best goal scorer stay in the team, and we want to create chances for him, and we want him to get the winning goals for us. So when you take that out of your side, there's a big disappointment. It's a big void, and a massive void to fill. That's quite honest. It wasn't just about Charlie scoring his goals as well. He was a good leader of the line. You know, he's a big, strong lad. He brought players into play. He created chances for other people in one way or another. You know, so you left a big hole in your most important part of the pitch. So it was very difficult to to go, and we didn't know that at the time what sort of money we were going to be trying, to ask for him or certainly get. You can ask for what you want, but whether you get it, that's another question. I think which from that point of view, you've got to take my position as well, is that we understand that as I said to you before, the club has to survive. There's lots of things going on in the football club that needs paying for, and by doing that, like I said, clubs need to sell players and start again with another player that's coming in that's not as quite the finished article as the one you just sold.
And were we close to signing any players once Charlie went, or
not really? I think the players were on loan. We were looking.
Okay.
We hadn't got the money to spend that we got for Charlie. So obviously the loan system, was an option for us. And at that time, unlike it is now, we could virtually loan all the year through. But now obviously there's windows and you can't do it. But so that was one respect. If we could have got somebody in that we thought was good, we did do.
With the Charlie Austin sale, because I remember that there was quite a lot of there's quite a lot of news around it, and it was quite an ongoing story. And we were trying to keep him, but it was Charlie himself that was trying to instigate this move. He wanted to go, which is fair enough to him, because he thought he could do better with his career. Now, I know he went to Burnley, but wasn't there an offer? And I remember at the time, obviously it was quite a while ago, but there was a larger offer. He didn't go for the biggest offer in the end. He went to Burnley for like 1.3, but I think that was quite cheap for Charlie Austin. Wasn't there another club that were in for a little bit more for him at the time? Which always puzzled me why he didn't go for more. I think it was Ipswich or something like that. I can't quite remember. But I think there was a large offer on the table, and why didn't we go for that one?
It was Ipswich.
Well, Ben, I'll be quite honest here. I don't get involved in that side of it. I mean, you should have Andrew Fitton on here, and he can answer you better, because sometimes you're not told. You just get on with it and say no, we're not having it. They might tell you in passing that we've turned a bid down, or etc. But I really don't even know the figures that he went to Burnley for either. I don't know when he went to Burnley to West Brom. I don't know what that was either. So it's not something that I worry about, if I'm honest. It's just a fact of the fee is, you're either going to get some or you're not. And we weren't, because we didn't have that leeway to go and spend a lot of money to replace it. But I think honestly, Andrew is the only one who can tell you that who the if it was real or not, if it was Ipswich, I don't know. Or if that was anything, or it was just an inquiry, or money on the table, I really don't know.
Absolutely. Just before, so obviously after the January transfer window, I think it was middle of February, you stepped down as Swindon Town manager. We did have a couple of people in after you between February and towards the end of the season, but to be quite honest with you, Danny, we don't really want to talk about that. But we can't let you leave without talking about a certain Italian that actually properly succeeded you in the Swindon Town job. And you obviously managed him at Sheffield Wednesday very briefly, and there is a story in your book in regards to this person, and his name is Paolo Di Canio. What kind? I mean, I think we all kind of know what kind of character Paolo is, but what was he like to work with? And the story in your book, would you like to go into a little bit more detail about it?
Well, Paolo, as everybody knows, I think in football, he's very volatile, and but he's a magician on the ball. He could be very much of a maverick in that respect, but he will explode at certain situations, whatever it may be, whether it be on the pitch, whether it be an interview, I don't know, whatever it is. I suppose that's only Paolo can explain why. Where I found him as a fantastic player, very, 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 how can I say, dedicated individual in terms of his professionalism. He was a fit lad. He would go away, in the summer, and he would keep fit all summer. He'd employ his own fitness coach. You keep him ticking over all during the summer. Come back as fit as anything, and that's what you found him. But he'd just do things that you think, where did that come from? You know, or you say, what's happened here? You know, and that's the way he was. You know, but you had to handle that side of him. As an individual, I could have done it better. I've been a bit more experienced when I was at Sheffield Wednesday. I may have handled that situation better than when he did it. But what I will say is that he could have handled it better. The club could have handled it better, and I could have handled it better when Sheffield Wednesday lost him to West Ham because he went there for an absolute pittance. That signings of the century, that with somebody who was worth about £8 million and they got it for £1. So, you know, so in that respect, you know, whatever happened in there, you know, we have to learn our lessons by, and I think Paolo did. But when Paolo comes into management, then he realises how tough, and he realises now that it's not just himself he's got to think about. He's got to think about 26 other people, another 10,000 fans, boardroom, investors, whoever you want to call them. That's now play.
With Paolo, Rich. With Paolo, you talked about how dedicated he was, and certainly when he was at Swindon, he demanded a hell of a lot from the players. Was he demanding to his teammates while he was training when he was with you that they came up to what he would consider his standards?
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, that's one of the frustrations that he would always show. And I think sometimes when you're in management, when you've played at the top level and you've been in the big games, and then all of a sudden you come down to maybe League One, League Two, and you're starting to coach there, you have to be mindful of that. Yes, you want to come to bring them up to the standards, but sometimes it's not possible. And sometimes you have to understand that certain individuals are not capable of performing like you can. And I think with Paolo, that's a bit frustrating, really, because he wanted the top level player playing in his team, whoever it be, at Swindon, or be at Sunderland, whatever. And it's not always feasible, that. But I don't think you can lose faith in what you've got there, because you will get the best out of them. If you're trying to compare them with the top players and they're not coming up to standard, and you're virtually telling them that, then you're going to lose confidence. You know, you've got to build them up to the peak of they possibly can play at, and then understand that they possibly can't go any further. But just get the best of them out of them there. But I think with Paolo, because they weren't up to the standard that he could play at, he could perhaps get a bit more frustrated than most of us.
Yeah, they were at League Two for a reason, aren't they?
Well, yeah. Sometimes it's a stepping stone for some. Some will come to to the standard that you want, but as a group, it's very unlikely the group will. But you might get a handful of players who do that.
I think I think wages comes into a big part of it as well, does it, Danny? Because obviously there's a big difference from the money that they were on at Swindon compared to where they were in the Premier League at Sunderland. Do you think that had a quite a big part to play on it as well?
Well, going back to what I said before, a club of with the standing of Swindon won't compete with Man. You really shouldn't think you could. And if you do so, you'll end up with no football club. Historians of the football club and the board of directors there, they have that responsibility, and it's not easy because they're criticised, left, right, and centre by fans by not doing this, that, and the other. And so I think sometimes you have to understand their position.
Absolutely.
Club can keep functioning, and they can't go and pay wages. That some of the top players would want to come to League Two or League One. And then you just got to cut your losses and say, no, okay, we can't do it. Let's go get the best that we possibly can, that we can afford. And that takes a team effort. It's a team effort. It's through your scouting system. It's through people that outside of the game. It's people upstairs understanding what we can afford and what we can't. So it's a team effort. So you've got to look for help all around you. And come up with the best solution you can.
Absolutely, yeah. Ben, did you have a quick question there?
I was just going a little back. Of just saying a little bit before when managing Paolo. Actually, I was just quite interested with a character like that who is so headstrong in the dressing room. When there's bound to be times where he thinks that what you're doing, your tactics are incorrect in his mind, and stops him. How do you cap down on someone like that, who's obviously a player that can turn a game the drop of the hat, so you want him on the pitch, but he's going, well, I think you're wrong. I think we should do this. And he's probably quite influential in the squad as well. It must be quite a handle just keeping down on a player like that, because you want him playing, but you also want him to toe the line as well. It must be quite tricky. I was just saying, do you have any good stories in the dressing room, Paolo, or any, what was he like with other players? Because obviously he would have told players to their faces if they're not pulling their weight. He'd be gone, like, you're playing shit today. Why? Why aren't you running? Why aren't you doing this? You should work for me. Is there any like proper training ground bust ups, kind of like that with Brown Paolo, or any juicy stories that probably not known before with him? Because he was a firecracker.
I'm going back to saying before, we all do it. It happens in every day. Every day, Man City will have them now. Liverpool will have them. Everybody has these moments in training. And just because it's Paolo and he's fiery, it doesn't mean to say he's the only one, in football that does it. We've all been guilty of it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's showing your passion that you've got. If I remember when I was young, there used to be a lad called John Ritson, who was a fullback for Bolton in the glory years. He played alongside Gordon Taylor and people like that when I was coming into the game. And one morning in training, John had me by the throat. I was only 17, 18, getting in the first team, and said, listen, son, I've got a mortgage to pay and 2 kids to look after. Don't start pissing around on that football pitch. Make sure. A winning bonus would be about £5, but in the wages. So, it's there, everybody wants to win. And sometimes if you're not taking it too seriously, then, people come down on you. And I've forgotten that moment. And so Paolo's nothing unusual. It's thing that happens all the time. Sometimes it can get a bit out of hand and you've got to calm it down. Generally, it's what players are. That's why they're in the professional football players. That's why they've got to such a standard, because they care, and capable, of confronting other people when they know they're not pulling the weight.
Could you see a manager in him when he was playing? Do you think one day he'll be a good manager?
I could have done if he could control his feelings. Yes, you can get that passion, but you've still got to be controlled in what you want out of your player. But yeah, you could. Of course, you could. Yeah, he was. He's had a career, wonderful career, and played under some of the greatest managers ever. So you pick something up somewhere, haven't you? You want to do it or not? Whether Paolo still wants to do it, I have no idea. But I think having a taste of it like he has, he's just realised maybe just out of just.
Definitely, no, absolutely, and I mean, I know full hand when obviously Paolo did become manager. He definitely livened up, and it was really good to see him in the flesh, because I didn't really get the chance to see him as a player himself, although I've heard all the stories. But he definitely it definitely led on to what you built in the years that you were as Swindon manager. You got us to the playoff final, and then thankfully enough, although we had that season 2010-2011, Paolo came in, and like I say, it wasn't all plain sailing for him when he started either as manager. But I think he learnt his lessons, like you were talking about, in terms of the people he's got around him, the players, the management, the board, and everything like that. So it does all lead into one. Those were some of our best years as well, being a Swindon fan as well. But we'll always remember that 2009-2010 season, especially for somebody like me who got to experience Wembley for the very first time. So and I know you'll probably say thank the players, but I want to thank you personally for giving me that really special moment to get to Wembley for the very first time, and it's something that I'll never forget. Obviously it didn't go the way it was, but the experience that I had that day was absolutely amazing, and I'll never forget it for as long as I live. So I want to say a personal thank you to you, and I'd love to thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your time at Swindon and some of your special memories throughout your playing and management career. So thank you so much for your time today, Danny. It's really, really been brilliant.
Rich, can I just obviously I don't know how much time you've got, Danny. Just got a couple of things I thought I'd like to read out to you from one of your ex-players, Christian Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, having read his book, it was quite a wonder he could play 90 minutes with some of the things that he got up to. And one of the things he said was, I'll read it. He says, he felt guilty about the games he played, pissed or hungover. And to make amends, typical alcoholic, he bought you a bottle of champagne, which I thought was sounds like typical Christian Roberts. But he did finish by saying, I like Danny, had a lot of time for him as a manager and as a man. And I think that tells us a lot for a player like Christian Roberts to say that about you. And obviously, I think it goes without saying that obviously your man management throughout your career has been one of the standout elements of your personality, and you've obviously done a great job. But one other thing he did say, what's this about dodgy suede Gucci shoes that they used to take the piss out of you with?
Yeah. But all my gear anyway. I think he was only jealous. That was all he was.
He spent too much on the booze and couldn't afford the shoes.
To Christian, when the problems that he did have, we were made aware of it as we went along. But the one thing about Christian, and sometimes the advice we got with people that were in that situation, is football was a good environment for him. Football got from areas where he didn't want to be in, although he couldn't help himself at times. So we tried to make it the best environment we possibly could. We tried to keep him at the training ground for as long as we could. We didn't let him like him getting off too early and this, that, and the other, and keep him back because we knew what he was going back to, the environment he was going back to, but there was no control in it from our point of view. We just had to make sure he was capable of performing in training and then on the games, and that's what he was. And I like Christian a lot. He had I'm really sorry for the problems that he did have, because he had an immense ability. He was incredible. Both feet, strong, quick, powerful. He could get his goals, as you well know. I just wonder sometimes if he didn't have those problems, where he could have reached. And so I felt a little bit, how can I say, cheated really, because I wanted him to do better. But he had his own to get over first and foremost. And they were the most important ones for him.
Yeah, I guess it showed what a player he was coming to Swindon from Bristol when they used to sing. He used to play for City, but he's all right now. That goes a long way to telling you what a good player he was.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, again, I just want to say again, thank you so much, Danny. You can buy Danny's book right now. It's on the screen. Danny Wilson, I get knocked down, but I get up again. Please go out and buy it. Danny, where can they buy the book?
Well, it's easier to get it online really with the Bob and Lawrence. It's easy to go on their website and then you can pick it up there. It's cheaper.
Fantastic. Brilliant, Danny. Thank you so much again. Nick, thank you very much. Ben, thank you. And a massive thank you as well to Kieran. And of course, our very special guest today, Danny Wilson. Thank you so much. We've been Force Rush In. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you, chap.
Take my hands, take my whole life too, but I can't help falling in love.